Shalom everyone, this is Amir Tsarfati from Behold Israel. We're about to have a great interview with Dr. Golan Broshi on the topic of who is a Jew? What is Judaism? Is Christianity a new religion, or is it actually a form of Judaism that existed already in the Second Temple period? And I chose to conduct this interview right here on the coastal plains of Israel, the city of Netanya, where the Mediterranean is meeting the land of Israel, because this is the meeting point of the Gentile world and the Jewish world throughout centuries. And I think that it's interesting and important to maybe take a look at the Jewish people and the Jewish Messiah and the gospel from the outside into the land of Israel. Dr. Golan Broshi, what an honor to have you here with us today. We've known each other for quite a few years.
Beth Chesda congregation.
Beth Chesda congregation, which I'm still part of, but you moved to central Israel now and not in the north anymore. And you are one of the professors in the Israel College of the Bible.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, yeah, it's a pleasure being here. And I was born and raised in Kibbutz Malkiah, up north, really ultra-atheistic, ultra-communistic environment. You know, just we slept in a kid's house, children's house, because the kids belonged to the kibbutz. The kids didn't belong to their parents. But, you know, God can reach even the darkest places in the world. Yes. And God sent an angel from Oregon, from Oregon, to witness.
Wow.
But, you know, this angel was so naive. You know how he witnessed to me? You know what he told me? Nothing. But the way he acted, the way he behaved, I was overwhelmed. I said, what manner of man is he?
You're talking about a real person?
A real person that came to volunteer in the kibbutz. And he didn't witness with words, but with his deeds.
Wow.
But I was too stubborn, I was too stupid, I guess, and I didn't catch it. So God had to send another angel. This time, from Korea. You cannot go more Gentile than this, right?
Yes.
And again, you know, what did this angel say? Nothing.
Nothing.
But I could see in her eyes the glory of Israel, you know, the glory of the salvation of Israel. I saw it in her eyes. And, you know, long story short, we got married after Yeshua saved me. We got married. We have a couple of kids. And we live close to this place, close to this hotel.
And you graduated from the Haifa University?
First Haifa University, then I went to the Hebrew University, and then I finished my doctorate in Dallas Theological Seminary, DTS.
DTS
and I serve
graduate.
in ICB, I serve as a teacher.
Wonderful. And I know that recently you wrote a book and that is being translated right now.
Yes, so you know the myth of the oral law. It's
the myth of the oral law.
It's in Hebrew, Mitos HaTorah Shebe'al Peh, and it's being translated as we speak to English.
Wonderful.
And so we could offer it in English.
This is great. Yeah. And you know, the topic we're going to talk about this morning here from the coastal city of Netanya, which is where the Israel College of the Bible located. Is literally a topic that bothers millions around the world.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's also a tool in the hands of the enemy to confuse the people of God. And that topic is, who are the real Jews? And
even more, are there any real Jews?
Yes.
So why would somebody say that there are no more Jews? And this is what we're going to talk about. But first, we have to say, what is
a Jew?
What is a Jew?
Who is Israel? Who is a Jew?
So we'll go to the most famous book in the world, the oldest book in the world, the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah? And in the Bible, you know, Israel appears hundreds, if not thousands of times. Israel in the Bible could be either the God of Israel or the physical descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
So the great question is, are the Jews ethnos or ethos?
So this is the main question. Is Judaism a religion, or Judaism is an ethnic group like the Chinese, like the Swedish? So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, we didn't go to the New Testament yet. In the Old Testament, Israel and the Jews are only physical descendants, even if they don't keep the law.
They're still Jews.
So listen, now this is almost crazy. Even if they don't keep Judaism, let's say the Jewish law, they're still Jews. No matter what, they could be secular, they could be...
Because they were born Jews.
Exactly. A Jew is somebody, and by the way, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's through the father.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk in a minute about conversion and about the mother thing. But in the Bible, it's always through the father, and we see it with Joseph. Who did Joseph marry? Osnat.
Yes.
Osnat was an Egyptian. Now, according to the Talmud, every one of the kids of Jacob, without Joseph married an Egyptian. All the other kids of Jacob, the 11, married Canaanite women.
Wow.
So they didn't marry Jewish women, but their sons were still
Jews.
Considered to be Jews.
Because
Exactly.
it's the seed.
It's the seed.
Seed is always the father.
And from the father.
So basically, what you're saying is a descendant of a Jewish father automatically is a Jew.
According to the Old Testament, that's the only
Even today.
criteria. Today,
No, I'm saying biblically.
Biblically,
Even today. God
Biblically,
never changed it.
God didn't change it.
Okay.
The problem is that men
Of course.
messed with it. But the term Jewish people, it could be surprising for some of us, but the term Jewish people appears only in Jeremiah and in Esther. Mordecai wasn't a descendant of Judah. Mordecai wasn't from the tribe of Judah, but he's described as Mordecai the Jew.
Yes.
Because he came from Israel. He was a descendant of Jacob. So Mordecai is a Jew, not because he's Judean, not because he came from the tribe of Judah necessarily, because he came actually from the tribe of Benjamin, but he's a descendant of Jacob. So we see it from Genesis to the book of Esther, which is late. From Genesis to Esther, a Jew is a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
I see. Now, we see today there's the term a Jew, but there's also a term called Judaism. And Judaism, everybody refers to as the religion of the Jews.
So exactly. Now the question is, where does the term Judaism appear first? And you wouldn't believe it, but before that, how does the New Testament define a Jew?
Okay, that's true.
How does the New Testament define Israel? So some of us would be surprised, but exactly
As the Old.
Testament. Exactly. Now, the term Jews appears in the New Testament over 100 times, always referring to the descendant, the physical descendant of Israel. If they believe in Yeshua, if they reject Yeshua, if they follow the God of Israel, if they follow other gods, the descendant of Israel are like, it's in their blood. It's in the DNA.
It is a blood thing.
Exactly. It's
bloodline.
Jews are bloodline. Exactly. It doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what you practice.
Yes.
You don't necessarily follow the truth, but you don't stop being a Jew.
Yes.
Because again, if we compare it to other ethnicities, how can a Chinese person stop being Chinese? If he believes that or this, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Right? You're Chinese because you're born Chinese. You
Yes.
cannot change it. Now, in the New Testament, and this is why the problem starts, in the New Testament, there are other meaning for the term Jews. In the Gospel of John, the term Jews appears many times. But there in the Gospel of John, sometimes the terms Jews refer only to the Jewish leaders. Only.
The leadership of the Jewish people.
Scholars agree. The religious Jews that rejected Yeshua are called Jewish, are called the Jews because they come from Judea, from Jerusalem, compared to the Galileans. So Simon Peter is a Galilean Jew.
So sometimes in the Gospels, when the
John.
term Jews was mentioned, it wasn't necessarily talking about people not from Judea or not from leadership.
Exactly. So when Yeshua is blaming the Jews in the Gospel of John, he's not blaming all the Jews. When he say, you are of your father Satan,
Yes.
he's talking to specific Jews, the Pharisees.
Yes.
The Pharisees, the priests, the scribes, but mainly the scribes and the Pharisees, they lived in Jerusalem. They were Judeans compared to Simon, that was Galilean.
Yes.
But of course Simon was a Jew. Shaul,
Yes.
Paul the Apostle, was a Jew,
Jew.
but he wasn't Judean because he wasn't born in Judea.
Got you. So we see that in the New Testament, there are two ways to refer to the Jewish people. The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
All the Jewish people.
Yes. Or the leadership that was religious and very, very into the law and all that. And so
opposite
I
to Yeshua.
wonder, The negative term Jew referred probably only to the leadership.
Exactly. So scholars find out every time the Jews are spoken negatively in the New Testament, it only refers to parts of the Jews.
Yes.
So, and again, this is really important because the argument about the true way is within Judaism. Within the realm of Jewish people, there's many cults, there's many Judaisms.
Many substreams and
exactly,
subgroups.
Streams, groups. There's these scenes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the followers of Yeshua.
Yes.
And the argument is within the family.
Yes.
This is important to understand. The argument of who is the true Jew in the sense of the spiritual Jew is within the realm of Judaism.
Wow, that's huge what you just said. What you just said is this, because let's face it, a lot of Gentile believers believe they're the spiritual Israel, and when he talks about who the real Jew is and all of that, they're the spiritual and there's the physical. But what you're saying is, when the Gospels and the epistles talked about the spiritual Jews as well as the physical Jews, it was a Jewish discussion and argument within themselves.
Within the Jews, and we'll see it in
some are spiritual and some are carnal, some are religious.
Listen, in Israel, what's the percentage of secular Jews? How many secular Jews?
Nowadays, it's about 70%.
70%. Let's say 50%.
Let's say 50.
So, are there Jews or not Jews?
Of course they are.
Of course they're Jews, but they're secular because of the Holocaust, because of other things. They've forsaken God, but they're Jews. So, now, is there arguments in Israel?
Of course.
About politics, about other... There's arguments like in every country. And by the way, all the separation between the spiritual and physical, it's really dangerous because it goes to the Gnostic philosophy. A man is a spirit and a body. You don't separate Amir from his spirit.
Yes.
The spirit needs your physical body, and your physical body needs your spirit. So all this question that, okay, Israel is physical, but the spiritual Israel is no.
So what you're saying is, Israel is physical, but of the physical Israel, there were also the spiritual ones.
So Professor Daniel Boyarin, I think he lives in America, he says, forget about Christianity and Judaism. Forget about it. In the first century, many Judaisms, many ways, many Judaism, Messianic Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism.
But how will a non-Jew define himself?
So a non-Jew was like...
Non-Jew believer.
Yeah, but listen, Boyarin says before the the Gentile came to faith, before that, in the time of the Gospels, before any Gentile got saved, we had many forms of Judaism.
So you're saying there is no Christianity within Judaism. There was one more Jewish group.
And not only one more, there's another professor from Hebrew University which says that the Messianic Judaism is before the Rabbinic Judaism.
Absolutely, it is.
Historically came before. So listen, we have many Judaisms, and the question is, which one is the true Judaism? The struggle in the first century Judaisms was, what is the way? Who has the authority from the Bible?
What's the way, what's the truth, and what's the life?
Exactly.
That's why you had to tell them that.
Exactly. And who has the authority over Israel? The Pharisees? The priests? The Sadducees? Who has the authority over the people? Listen, the implication is huge, because if Messianic Judaism is the true Judaism, and of course we believe it is, imagine this is Judaism. Christianity is Jewish.
Christianity is actually the true Judaism, basically.
And now you understand why this professor from the Hebrew University, Professor Yovel, he has a whole book dedicated to the theme, the Christian roots of the rabbinic Jewish faith.
Wow.
The Christian roots. Now, when he means
rabbinical Jewish faith.
So the Christian roots of the rabbinic faith. Every ceremony, holiday that we have in the rabbinic Judaism, he can find the origin in Messianic Judaism. And I'll give you an example.
But he called it Christian.
He calls it Christianity.
Yes.
But he knows it's Jewish. And he has an example. The Seder, the Passover.
Passover.
He says the first Passover he can find is in the Gospels, in the Last Supper. Listen, this professor is a secular professor. The first Seder, the first Passover historically the first Passover as we know it today, that the family is gathering and singing and eating, is found in the Last Supper in the Gospels, not in the rabbinic literature that came 200 years later.
So rabbinical literature cannot record a single time of a Passover Seder before the first century.
Because the rabbinic literature is so late, and the professor is an historian. So he says, wait, I'm going to check the writings. If the writings of the New Testament come before the writings of the rabbis, I have to treat them as earlier. So he's saying the first account of Leila Seder, of the Passover, is in the New Testament. Now, the question is, we said Jews from the Old Testament and the New Testament, Jews are descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, what about the rabbinic literature? Who is a Jew concerning the rabbinic literature?
There is the definition of who a Jew is according to the Bible.
The Bible, the Old and New Testament.
The Old and the New Testament, which is the Word of God. But you say, the rabbinical Judaism offers a different definition to who a Jew is.
And not only a different, a reformation which echoes to this day.
Wow.
A huge reformation, because rabbinic literature revolutionized the term Jew. Because they wanted to get the authority over Israel, they said, if you don't join our party, our political party, the Pharisees, if you don't join, your Judaism would be in risk. Your Jewishness, you could lose your Jewishness if you don't follow our type of Judaism.
Actually, the first people who actually said that Judaism is ethos rather than ethnos were Jews.
Exactly. The
rabbinical establishment.
The rabbinic Jews are the first Jews in history which said that the Judaism is only a religion, or is mainly a religion, and if you don't follow our type of religion, our type of Judaism, the rabbinic Judaism, your Jewishness would be in risk.
Oh, wow.
This is a revolution, amazing revolution. And I want you to see a quote from, and it's from the Talmud, tractate Megillah. They ask, why did Mordechai from Esther, Mordechai from the book of Esther, why did Mordechai was called a Jew? Now, the obvious question, we said the obvious answer, Mordechai was called a Jew because he was a descendant of Jacob. He was from the tribe. The Talmud said no. The rabbi said no. He was called a Jew because who kafar, how do you say lichpor?
Well, he rejected.
He rejected avodah zarah. He rejected the
paganism,
pagan worship. He rejected idols,
idol worship.
So listen, according to this tractate in the Talmud, Mordecai was called a Jew not because his physical origin,
not because of ethnic,
but because
background.
of ethos, because his theology was right.
Wow,
this is incredible. This wouldn't pass anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. If you try it on any other people in the world, any other group of people, it wouldn't work. But the rabbi said, Mordecai was called a Jew because he forsook pagan worship or other gods and stayed with the God of Israel.
wow.
This is incredible. Now, scholars are saying that the rabbis took it further. If you deny Christianity, you're called a Jew. If you deny Yeshua the Messiah, this is enough to call you a Jew. So a real Jew, a true Jew, is the one that rejected a certain theology, a certain belief.
So if you're a non-Christian, you're a Jew.
Exactly. Now, this opens the door.
I mean, that's the rabbinical.
And listen, this opens the door for this this reformation that we say, that this is a change of Judaism from ethnos
to ethos.
To ethos. Now, ethos is an idea, is a theology,
Yes.
is a religion. Now, this starts the confusion. What is Judaism? Is it a religion or is it an ethnic group? What is Judaism? The confusion starts only then.
So our theme is who are the real Jews? Going back to the Old Testament, New Testament, a real Jew is anyone who is descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Exactly.
Comes the rabbinical Judaism, and then it says the real Jews are those who are they follow us and our traditions, our party. B, as long as they're non-Christian.
If they deny the
Jesus,
enemy, because listen, there's a political fight over the authority on the Bible, and the Messianic Jews are growing, their population is growing, the rabbinic Jews are growing. So they say, if you, as long as you reject them, you're with us. But remember, this is like a political, and it's important to understand, it's a family dispute. Within the family, this is a family dispute over authority. One amazing decision changed the Jewish world forever. And we read it in Acts 15, in the 15th chapter of Acts, when Gentiles
I love that. This chapter, I'm quoting it all the time.
Listen, the Jewish disciples of Yeshua don't know what to do because something which never happened before happening now.
Yes.
Gentiles are embracing the Messiah. They're embracing the Jewish way, this kind of Judaism.
And that's why it was a Jewish discussion what to do with the
now
Gentiles.
the question arises, what are we doing with Gentiles? Now why? Why? Because in the rabbinic party, when Gentiles are joining, they're no longer Gentiles. They're replacing Israel, so to speak, by becoming Israel with conversion. So they ask themselves, should the Gentiles that follow Yeshua convert? Should they convert like in the rabbinic party?
So I'm reading, certain men came down from Judea, taught the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved.
Unless you convert. This is Giur. This is conversion.
That's convert. Unless you convert. So you're basically saying the people who followed Paul didn't care about the soul or the spirit as much as of the flesh.
And it says they were believing Jews in Yeshua that came from the Pharisees. In their mind, they said, wait a minute, the rabbis are converting Gentiles. We should convert them too if they follow Christ.
Yes.
If they follow this kind of rabbinic Judaism, they convert. How come so they should convert if they follow this kind of Judaism, which is the Messianic Judaism?
So you're saying they are people who supposedly followed Christ, but they had a twisted understanding.
Exactly, because they came from a rabbinic background.
I see.
They were saved from rabbinic Judaism into Messianic Judaism, and they say, fellas, let's convert them now.
So this is why we know that Paul came all the way to Jerusalem, and he says we were received by the church and the apostles and the elders, and then they reported all things that God had done with them. But some of the sect of the Pharisees,
exactly, what did they say?
Who believed, rose up saying, it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses.
To convert them to make them Jews. They said Gentiles must become Jews, like the rabbis are doing.
And up until today, I see Gentiles that want to become Jews. Interesting.
And what is the answer?
And the answer was, first of all, the apostles and the elders came together to consider the matter. It was a big thing. I'll talk all the way. I love Peter's speech, because Peter was the first one. He says, guys, sorry. He says, with all the respect, he rose up and said to them, men and brethren, you know that a good while ago God chose among us that by my own mouth, the Gentiles should hear the word of the gospel and believe. So God, who knows the heart, acknowledged them by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did to us, and made no distinction between them, us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now therefore, why do you test God by putting a yoke on the neck of the disciples which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? Exactly. But we believe that through the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, now he's being, I call it, he was provoked to jealousy by them. Yeah. We shall be saved in the same manner as they. Isn't that interesting?
So the resolution, the decision was the Gentiles that are embracing this Judaism, Messianic Judaism.
Decision in verse 19, yes.
What does it say, 19?
Okay, the decision, therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to God, but that we write to them to just abstain from things polluted by idols, sexual immorality, things strangled, and from blood. That's it.
They don't need
to be circumcised.
And they don't need to convert. They don't need to become Jews. And I'll tell you more. They cannot become Jews. How can a Chinese person that receives Yeshua can become Jew? How can he become a Jew? He can never become a descendant of Jacob.
Exactly.
He's a Jew maybe in the spirit because he followed the spiritual Judaism. He follows
But he's
Christ.
lacking the physical ethnic.
He would never be physically, but okay. So
he
we
was
have,
grafted in.
so we have that resolution with the disciples of Yeshua, but the disciples of the rabbis decided exactly the opposite. Gentiles that would follow our way, the rabbinic way, would have to convert. They don't even have an option. One group in Judaism, Messianic Judaism, is saying you don't need to convert. The other group, the opposition, is saying you must convert. So now, the implication is amazing because, I'll ask you, what are more in the world, more Jews or more Gentiles?
Absolutely Gentiles.
Gentiles. So in a few years, if Gentiles are coming by thousands to the faith in Yeshua, this movement is going to change demographically. Because if there in the beginning there were more Jews, Messianic Jews, now after a few years there would be more Gentile Jews.
Which is that story.
And it's the story till today. There's more Gentiles followers of Yeshua. So this religion appears to be Gentile because it's full of Gentiles, right? Because there's more Gentiles. Of course there's more Gentiles. But what happened with the rabbinic camp? In the rabbinic Judaism, you had to convert to Judaism. So every Gentile that embraced rabbinic Judaism became a Jew. So it grew. So if Messianic Judaism shrank with the Jewish population,
Rabbinical Judaism
exactly, and this
expanded.
is what we have today.
And not necessarily all by real Jews.
Exactly. Rabbi Akiva, he wasn't a Jew. Rabbi Meir, Shmaya and Avtalion, all the big shots, all the hot shots in rabbinic Judaism, some of them were not Jews physically. They converted, so they became Jews, as if you can become...
They were converts.
Exactly. And this is the key. When the rabbis decide that they would go for conversion and invent conversion, because we don't see it anywhere in the Old Testament. We don't see. We see it in the New Testament when Yeshua is rebuking them for doing it. He says, how can you convert Gentiles all over the world? You're making them sons of hell more than you.
Yes.
You're sending them to hell because it's the wrong Judaism.
Yes.
Yeshua is against conversion because there's no... How can you make a Swedish man become descendant of Jacob? How can you change his blood?
Yes.
No, you're saying, wait, Golan, wait a minute. The rabbi themselves, do they really believe in that conversion? Do they really believe a Chinese person can become Jewish? Come on, you know it's nonsense, right?
Do they?
So I'll tell you. So the halakha is the rabbinic law, the Mishnah.
Yeah.
The halakha is asking some questions. Wait a minute. A Chinese person converted, became a Jew, and he was an only son to his father. Now his father is still Chinese. His father is dead. Who is he entitled? Is the son entitled for the inheritance of the father? Yes or no? Now why the question arose? Because if he's Jewish, he's no more Chinese. So does a Chinese person that converted entitled to inherit his father after his father died? And the answer in the Talmud is no.
Wow.
Because he's not Chinese anymore. Not only that, a convert to rabbinic Judaism is born again.
They use that term.
The term is born again as a child. As a child is born again. Remember Yeshua said, unless you come as children and unless you're born from the Spirit, born again. This is why Professor Yovel is saying, from the Hebrew University, he's saying there's so many parallels between the two movements. And he's saying the rabbis took the phrases from Messianic Judaism. So a convert is born again like a child anew to Judaism. Now another question arose. And I'm sorry for being blunt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can a Chinese person marry his Chinese sister?
Obviously.
And the Rambam, Rabbi the Maimonides, I think.
Maimonides.
Yeah, Rambam says, according to the halakha, he cannot marry his sister. Why? Because his sister is still Chinese. She's a Gentile. Unless she converts, he cannot marry her.
And if she converts,
If she converts according to rabbinic law,
they're not brothers and
they're
sisters.
not brother and sister, so he can marry her. This is just to say that at least the rabbis believed this conversion. It wasn't only a fiction. Okay, we'll accept those Gentiles. And look, Rabbi Akiva wasn't a Jew. He married Rachel. He married a Jewish girl, and his descendants are Jewish. No question about it. Nobody, you know, even today, if you ask people in the streets, hey, who's the most famous rabbinic Jew in the world? It's Rabbi Akiva, you know, Rabbi Akiva probably. He wasn't even a Jew. But because his parents converted, now he's a physical Jew. This is. Can you see more replacement theology than
Yes,
this?
I know. But it's interesting, Golan. I tell you why. Satan knows who the real Jews are.
And he came to confuse, right?
Yes. But he knows that if he wants to get rid of the Jews, he needs to tell the enemies of Israel, let's say Hitler. Hitler didn't look for religious Jews. He didn't look for rabbis or rabbinical Jews.
He didn't care.
Hitler did think that it's an ethnos.
Exactly.
And he went after every person with Jewish blood.
Because he knew that if you take down the ethnicity, the ethnos Jews, you take down Judaism.
Yes.
You don't need first take the physical first. The spiritual will die later. You know what I mean? Most of the anti-Semites, who do they attack? The spiritual Jews, the spiritual Israel. No. They would never attack spiritual. They think they're the spiritual Israel.
Yes.
So they would always attack physical Israel, which tells you that all this nonsense about are there any real Jews? If there is anti-Semitism, they're real Jews.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. First they say there are no more real Jews, and then they blame the Jews for all the problems of the world.
For everything. You have to decide which end of the stick.
But
Professor, you know, there's another Professor Yirmiyahu Yovel, another professor. He comes today and he says, wait a minute, you're going crazy. Judaism became a religion? He says, wait a minute. If Judaism is a religion, which religion is it? Is it Reform Judaism? Is it conservative? Is it Orthodox? What about the secular Jews? If Judaism is only a religion, what about the millions of secular Jews all around the world? So he says, of course, this is nonsense. Of course, Judaism is not only a religion, and is not a religion from the beginning. But on the other hand, Professor Yirmiyahu Yovel is asking, if Judaism is only an ethnic thing, we have another problem. What about all the conversions? All the converts, all the thousands of converts that came from the time of Yeshua till today. Yirmiyahu Yovel, this professor, is asking, if Judaism is only ethnicity, what do we do with all the converts now? What do we do with Rabbi Akiva? We throw him under the bus? Yes. What are we going to do with him? And this question of who is a Jew is still haunting the Jewish world. It's still a family dispute, like in the first century, in Israel,
True.
In the highest courts. There's still, in the Supreme Court, the question, who is the Jew? Now I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
This confusion influenced the secular state of Israel with the law of return.
Yes.
Everybody knows the law of return, the law that gives permission to Jews everywhere in the world to make aliyah, to come to Israel.
By definition, Israel was declared as a Jewish state, was the state of the Jews.
So in the 50s of the former century, 1950, there was a law passed. Every Jew in the world can make aliyah, can come to Israel to live in Israel and will be a citizen of Israel. Every Jew. Now in the 70s, the rabbinic and religious parties said that, hey, wait, that's not good enough. That's not good enough, because we want to decide who's a Jew. So by the force of political, religious parties, the law of return was changed, was fixed. We call it a tikkun, a fix to the law. And they defined it for the first time in the world. Jews defined who is a Jew. And there's three criteria. First, you got to be born of a Jewish mother, which is incredible. Because in the Bible, it was a Jewish father.
Yes.
So they said a Jewish mother.
And by the way, when did that change?
In the Talmud. In the Talmud, they decided...
Was it because the Roman soldiers...
No, they would attribute it, and it's a good point what you said. They attribute it to Ezra. But it's out of context reading of Ezra, so we will leave Ezra aside. But the rabbis contributed this Reformation, which makes Jews only by their mother being Jewish. They attribute it to Ezra, but actually it's in the Talmud. But scholars are saying this is from the influence of the Greek, for the Romans, because the Romans in the laws they had something with the mother, with being a Roman citizen, something with the mother. So scholars are saying the rabbis took it or were influenced from a Roman law. But the first criteria was Jewish mother. You're Jewish. The second, if you converted, which is amazing.
So a Gentile who converted to
Judaism. A Gentile
Judaism
which converts
is now a
to
Jew
rabbinic
that
Judaism can make aliyah.
Yes.
And the third one, which is the most revolutionary one, if you're not a part of a different religion. So if Amir embraces different Judaism apart than rabbinic Judaism, Amir is no longer a Jew.
No, not a Jew for the sake
For
of the
the
law
sake
of return.
of the law of return.
If he is not an Israeli and he wants to move to Israel, they will not recognize him as a Jew if he is holding a belief in Yeshua.
And this is the strongest mix, mixing religion and ethnicity. Can you imagine that your faith would determine your ethnicity? Would it fly anywhere in the world?
Absolutely not.
This is incredible.
Golan, a question that I have to you is, how did the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem reshape the Judaism as it is today?
This is one of the most important questions of our discussion, because in the year 70, when the temple was destroyed, biblical Judaism was destroyed with it. I say again, biblical Judaism, biblical, and I mean
biblical
the Old
Judaism
Testament, the
that
Sinai,
was based on
the priests, on the temple, on the sacrifices, that was destroyed with the temple. And now, a New Testament had to come. Some kind of a New Testament, because the Old Testament was destroyed.
Which, was promised.
It was promised. Now listen, we know there's many parties in the Jewish world, and each one of them is so-called bringing a New Testament.
Yes.
Because all of them recognize when the temple was destroyed, the Old Testament Judaism was destroyed with it. Because the priests did not have any more a place to work.
Yes.
There were no longer sacrifices, no place of worship anymore. Biblical Judaism was destroyed, and another Judaism, a New Testament,
from the ashes of the temple, a new one rose.
Now the question is, which New Testament is the real one? The rabbinic New Testament of the oral law, or the Messianic New Testament by the blood of Yeshua? But every Jew knew that now something new has to come. A New Testament has to come, because the Sinai, you cannot keep this. The Sinai covenant is based on sacrificial work by the priest only, and only in one place which God chooses in Jerusalem.
Yes.
So listen, now in the second century, most Jews are gone from the country. They're in Babylon and in Europe. So there's no longer even the land of Israel, let alone the temple.
So there's no temple, there's no Jerusalem, there's no land of Israel for
exactly. And now a New Testament has to come. So in that sense, rabbinic Judaism offers a New Testament, and Messianic Judaism offers a New Testament. And Jews and Gentiles have to decide which New Testament is the true one that was what expected by the prophets. Was foretold by the prophets.
Yes.
Which New Testament? But it has to be new, because nobody today, nobody in Israel, nobody in the world keeps the Sinai covenants. Nobody.
Of course.
You can't.
You cannot do that.
Now people are saying, wait a minute, aren't they rebuilding the third temple? Yes, but in the third temple there would only be korbanot todah.
Yeah.
Only thanks.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving sacrifice. So the sins had to be atoned, but by another mean. Now listen, Yeshua said he's the atonement for sins. Yeshua, in the New Testament of the Messianic Judaism, Yeshua said, I'm the atonement. In Rabbinic Judaism, they said, wise disciples, which study the oral law, they are the atonement for Israel. So we see, listen, now you understand why Professor Yovel...
Now I understand why they confused Isaiah 53 completely.
Exactly, and you see why Professor Yovel is saying that this is so similar. Rabbinic and Messianic Judaism are so similar, because in Messianic Judaism, Yeshua is saying, I'm going to make sacrifice
I'm the ultimate
Israel,
sacrifice.
For Israel. I'm going to make atonement. And the Rabbinic party, the Rabbinic Judaism says, the wise disciples that are studying as we speak in the yeshiva, they are the true atonement. It says in Midrash Avot Rabbi Natan, it says, they are the true atonement for Israel.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? So you have to pick. Is Yeshua is going to be your atonement? or the wise disciples. Now, how did the rabbis make their Judaism so popular? How did you make somebody become a Jew? There's two ways. If he's Jewish, you have to convert him from secularism or whatever Judaism he practices. You have to convert him to rabbinic Jew. That's how you make him a real Jew.
Yeah.
But there's also what the scholars are saying, outside the Jewish world missionary work,
Yes.
to make the Gentile Jews by conversion. So rabbinic Jews is going with the two-edged sword. Inside the Jewish world will make converts, yeah, and outside the Jewish world will make converts from the Gentiles. But it's both conversion. You're converting from secularism, Judaism, and you're converting from being Gentile into Judaism.
I will be very honest with you. You know me, I'm shooting straight. Where we go now is the punchline. Is
deep water.
Yes. In this whole thing, I think was, first of all, it was amazing wealth of information that everybody could understand.
Praise
I
the
think
Lord.
the understanding that there's an internal
Dispute
dispute within the Jews.
Discussion.
Yes, discussion that people take it out of context. This is amazing. But I want to tell you something. And I know that hundreds of thousands of our followers, they know exactly my opinion about people who are spouting two, three verses from the New Testament that sounds very bad, and they make it look as if the New Testament is anti-Semite. Therefore, they have the justification to be anti-Semite and Christians at the same time.
Yes.
And let's deal with those verses and let's ask ourselves, can or is the New Testament an anti-Semitic book?
So only this question alone, is the New Testament anti-Semite, is an oxymoron. It's like, is the ice warm? Which New Testament? The Rabbinic New Testament? No, nobody would dare say the Rabbinic New Testament is anti-Semite, right? But which New Testament are you talking about? Remember, there's several New Testaments. Oh, so you're talking about this New Testament. Is this New Testament? Why? Because there's a few harsh verses when Yeshua is talking to his fellow Jews. If I took Isaiah, the first chapter, when Isaiah is calling them vipers,
Yes.
would somebody accuses Isaiah of being anti-Semite? What are you? Are you out of your mind?
It's anti-religion.
This is incredible. We said there's a family dispute. There's a dispute with Israel. Today, even today, politically wise, religiously wise, there's a discussion in Judaism, in Israel. What is the way? What is the true way in politics, in religion? There's a discussion among Jews.
Yes.
Let us discuss. Let us do it. We don't need,
Yes.
you can support us,
Yes.
but let us discuss it. Let us convince our Jewish fellows, our Jewish men, with the truth.
Yes.
But it's a Jewish discussion. Now I know there's a few harsh verses.
Let's read John 8:44.
But I just want to remind
Yes.
people, there's also verses in the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
And nobody
I
would dare.
agree with you. I agree
but
with you.
why would nobody dare? Because they think, well, the Old Testament is Jewish. The Old Testament is Judaism. Wait a minute. Who wrote the New Testament?
If not
the
Jewish
Jewish
people. Yes.
followers of Yeshua? So why do you call the New Testament anti-Jewish? How could it be anti-Jewish if it's Jewish altogether? And the
Wrote
most
it.
Jewish figure, the hero of it, is Yeshua.
Absolutely. And how
Salvation.
can both of us, as Jews, as Israeli born, could come to faith in Yeshua
If it was anti-Semite.
if this book was so anti-Semitic? Now,
But this is the lie that they sell us. And then when we open the gospel, we see, what? This book's supposed to be anti-Semite? This is the most Jewish book
Exactly.
in the world.
Amazing. You're
Why
right.
did you hide us from
yes.
this? Why did you
And so let's go to John 8:44.
Exactly.
Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees. He's speaking to the leaders, and he's saying,
And some of them are his disciples.
Yes.
Some of them follow him.
Yes.
Remember, some of the Pharisees are following him.
so he said, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. Now that's
Wow, that sounds pretty harsh, right?
it's very harsh, but Golan, I must tell you, that sounds familiar
Tell
to
me, Amir, tell me. Is there an election going on in America in a few months?
There is.
Are the opponents
Few
attacking
weeks.
one another?
Yes.
They're attacking one another. Are there still Americans?
They're still Americans.
They're no anti-American. At least none of them think he's anti-American, right?
Well,
No,
both
none
of
of
them, both of them claim to be
Exactly.
the true American.
But they can attack each other in an American dispute, and none of them is thinking he's not is an American, right?
Yes.
So there's a dispute here. Yeshua is disputing those another sect, and by the way, he's calling them you are from your father Satan. Did he call one of his disciples Satan
Yeah,
also?
it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm looking at
In Matthew 16?
Yeah, Matthew 16. It's obviously Caesarea Philippi, when Peter first acknowledged Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God, and then Peter rebukes Jesus
For going to the cross,
for talking about his soon death.
Yeah.
And Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, you're a stumbling block to me, and you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns."
So listen. Yeshua is calling
One of
his. Can you tell me of one Christian that would dare to say that Saint Peter is anti-Semite?
And he's of Satan.
Is of Satan?
He's
Can you show
Satan.
me Satan himself? Can you show me one Christian that would that? But when Yeshua is talking to other Jews who don't believe yet, then it's anti-Semite. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I know it's
This
weak,
is
and I know
nonsense.
it's, excuse me for my French, stupid, but I mean, that's how they take it.
But listen, it's not. Don't take our word. John MacArthur, not a Jewish believer. John MacArthur, from California, he wrote a commentary. He's saying what Yeshua is meaning. He's talking to Jews in the flesh. He means that they're not Jews in the spirit. Remember the dispute. What's the real spiritual way for Jews? So Yeshua is telling them, I recognize that you're Jews in the flesh. But even MacArthur said, calling them sons of Satan means they're not walking in the spiritual Judaism. They're not Jews in the spirit. Mm-hmm. That's the meaning of this verse in John.
And you know, it's funny because Golan, the Bible says, and I'm just reminded that right now, and I think everybody would probably appreciate. Everybody knows John 3:16. We all, we always quote that. But watch this. He says in verse 6, John 3:17. He says in 17. He says, "For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be condemned." And then He says in 18, "He who believes in Him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already."
Exactly.
In other words, whether you're a Jew or a non-Jew, if you're not believing in Christ, you're condemned already, and that is obviously...
Now, what did Yeshua tell His disciples? I did not come to the Gentiles. I came to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Exactly.
So of course, the dispute is going to be between Jews, because Yeshua didn't argue with Gentiles. He argued with his fellow man.
And now comes a big however. There are times, twice in
Revelation,
the book of Revelation, chapter 2 and chapter 3, verse 9, in both of them, where we hear of people who claim to be Jews. But they're nothing but the synagogue of Satan.
And this is what you're hearing today.
Absolutely.
In the social media.
Those anti-Semites today call the Jews, the real Jews, the synagogue of Satan.
Something about anti-Semites. They're already anti-Semites. They just need an excuse.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Haman, like Pharaoh, like the one from Germany that I don't want to remind his name also.
Yeah.
But they just need an excuse.
So here,
if you hate the Jews, you're gonna find
you will hang on any verse you want.
Even if the verses that you want to say from Revelation, even if they did not exist, they would find something else if they anti-Semites.
That's
right?
true. I
they
agree
just
with you.
need an excuse.
So in chapter 2, the letter.
Yeah. What does it say in English?
And of course, in chapter 2, and I'm talking about to the church of Ephesus.
So who's the letters are to?
To the churches.
The churches.
To the Gentiles. And then look what he says. He's talking to the churches, and it has to be clear to the people. This is not, in both chapter 2 verse 9 and chapter 3 verse 9, we're not talking about a condemnation for Israel or to Israel. This is about people who claim to be...
He's not talking to physical Jews anymore.
Not
That's
at all.
the point.
Not at all. Here it says, and let's read it. He says, I know your affliction and your poverty, yet you are rich. And then he says, I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. And then in chapter 3, and I'm not
9.
afraid to read those verses because I know how deceptive people can be. Now I'm talking about the letter to the church in Philadelphia. And look what he says. And he says this, "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you." So let's now remember, that's the Roman Empire. This is the first century. These are churches in Asia Minor. And now we're talking about the letters to the leaders of those churches regarding certain people who claim to be Jews. They are not really Jews, but actually synagogue of Satan.
Now, historians, Bible scholars that study history and context are saying, because Yeshua is speaking to non-Jews, a congregation that consists of mostly non-Jews, why are he saying that there are some people who are calling themselves Jews and are not Jews? How can they call themselves Jews but they're not real Jews? But why would they do it? So the scholars are saying the Romans, the pagan Romans, used to worship the emperor like
You're talking
a
about
god.
Caesar.
Yes, Caesar, like God.
True.
So he's saying they call themselves Jews as meaning following the true God. This as if those pathetic messianic Gentiles and Jews, they're wrong. They're
They
nothing.
follow the one that we crucified.
But they follow the crucified. Oh, this is.
Yeah.
And the Romans are saying we follow the true God, Caesar. We are the true Jews. So Jews in this sense is a compliment. Is we follow the true.
But then he says they're not.
But they're not Jews. They're not real Jews. One
ethnos,
because they're Romans. Because they're Romans, and then they followed Caesar.
Yes.
They see Caesar as God. So of course they're not Jews. But it doesn't have to do anything with real Jews.
Isn't that interesting, Golando? I totally accept this, but I think that if we take, obviously the Bible is also true today. And this is the book of Revelation, which means most of the book speaks of the future, not of the past. And
So I wonder, are there any Christians that are calling themselves Jews but are not real Jews?
absolutely,
Can this happen?
that's the thing.
Can this happen?
I believe,
Can history repeat
and
itself?
I'm sorry if I'm offending people right now, but it has to be said, and I know I'm going to be attacked for it, but so be it. I believe that any Christian who claims to be the true Israel and that he had replaced Israel and now he is Israel, namely replacement theology, I believe this is satanic, diabolic, and I believe...
We need to pray for them. Yeah?
Yes, we need to pray for them.
Repent, but repent.
I believe that
aggressively.
this is a synagogue of Satan. And you know, so many times I meet Gentiles who are keeping the law, who are trying to become more Jews than the Jews, and then they accuse those that are saved by grace as if they're not Christians.
So I have good news for these Gentiles, and I go back to Acts, the 15th chapter. You don't have to become
Absolutely.
Jews. This is not rabbinic Judaism. We
Absolutely.
don't force. Yeshua doesn't force anybody.
I strongly
This
agree
is
with
good
you.
news for that. You can still be Chinese. You
Yeah.
don't have to become Israel.
Yes.
You cannot become Israel. You embrace Israel's faith.
Yes.
You join the team. You can
Team.
embrace the Jewish faith
Absolutely.
without becoming Jewish.
You know, I want to end up this with a personal
story.
angle. It's a personal angle about our wives.
Our wives.
Yes, our wives. Let's face it. Our wives are a reflection, a mere reflection
Of this confusion.
of everything we just talked about.
And it's a paradox. Listen, my wife is Korean. I said you cannot go more Gentile than this. I'm sorry. This is the end of the world.
Okay.
Yeah? My wife converted in an Orthodox conversion show. Legally, my wife, for the rabbinic perspective, Jewish. My wife is legally Jewish. They turned it. She's no longer Korean. She's Jewish. Now your wife.
My wife, her father is a Jew.
So biblically, she's Jewish.
Biblical descendant of Holocaust survivors. My wife was born in Denmark to a Jewish father of a Holocaust, surviving parents, and to a Gentile born-again Christian mother. Now watch this, Golan. My wife that has the Jewish father, the blood, is considered by the rabbinical Jews as non-Jew.
Yeah.
And your wife that has no Jewish blood is considered full-blown Jew.
Exactly. Why? Because she passed the theological
Exactly.
test. And this is an example for the... if nobody understood a word we said until now, this is an example for the confusion between mixing oil and water, mixing religion with blood and ethnicity. You know, my wife is a Gentile, but is considered to be Jewish because she passed the test,
Yes.
the theological. Your wife is Jewish by ethnicity, but she's considered to be Gentile
Yes.
because she didn't
dancing in the moonlit night. Heartbeats running wild, so free. This kid, just you and me. Feel the rhythm, take my hand. Sparkles in a wonderland. Laughter echoes through the air. Together we're a perfect pair. We're dancing, dancing in the moonlight. Underneath the stars so high. We're jumping, jumping to the daylight. Never wanna say goodbye. Never wanna say goodbye. Neon lights are calling out. City's ours without a doubt. Fingers interlock so tight, swirling in the magic light. We're dancing, dancing in the moonlight. Underneath the stars so high. We're jumping, jumping to the daylight. Never wanna say goodbye. Hold me close, don't let me go. Feel the world in every glow. Moments ours, just take the lead. Dancing hearts, no words we need. We're dancing, dancing in the moonlight. Underneath the stars so high. We're jumping, jumping to the daylight. Never wanna say goodbye. Hold me close, let's chase the dawn. This feeling's only just